Okay, that just reinforces that if I do have the headphones just like this and there's music going, it picks it up on the mic. So there's that. Good to know. Anyway. Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the stream, or the video, if this is in video form, when you watch it on the YouTubes after the fact. As you can see from yonder image here, we are jumping into Robin Wall Kimmerer's Gathering Moss this week. Not gonna lie, I thought it would be a thicker book, mostly just based on writing Sweetgrass, but it's not that thick of a book. Interesting. But yeah, this particular one is published by the Oregon State University Press too, so very cool. Anyway, video good, audio good, awesome. We'll see how this works to just have the mic on. I might need to actually wear the headphones depending on how it works and how they work with range of motion, but for right now we're good. Oh, that's what I was gonna do. No. And for anyone wondering, this was another stream in which I was trying to make a sphere, like so. Still working on that project, by the by. Okay. No. That moment when you try and do a thing that you forgot to do before stream started. To, help something else be more illustrative. And failing horribly. Okay. Is it supposed to go that way? Hold on a second. No, it's not. It doesn't go that way either. What? Really? Come on. Why? Why are you like this? Almost. It doesn't go like that. I pushed it in literally the same way 4 times, and the last one it worked. Are you hooking up the microscope? No. Right now I'm just hooking up the camera because there's a few points in here. There's illustrations, and it's easier to just bust out the camera and show you that way than trying to hold it up to the thing. Where did the other one go? Anyway, there's a rogue set of tabs floating around somewhere. So, we'll see what happens. Alright, so, how's everybody doing? First off, is the order of business for today. Oh, yeah. Also, simply because you can see him in the background, I finished the little ghosty friend. Ooh. Let's angle that. There we go. I finished the little ghosty friend. So you've got the angry side, and you've got the happy side. There we go. Yeah. So there's happy ghost, and there's angry ghost. You can just have a sit right there. Yeah. Today's a relatively good day, so happy ghost is out in force. I seem to be sitting on part of a project. Alright. Anyway. Stress AF. Oh. Sending hugs. Yeah. I gotcha. Alright. So, I was listening to part of it and reading part of it, and like with my eyeballs, and then listening to another part, and so we'll see. That. Okay. Her voice is so soothing. Yeah. Like, there's some books that, either from the content or the narration, I have to, like, put it down and just, like, whatever. This, like, I think it ended up stopping at, like, chapter 8. Just because it's just, like, she's talking about plants and things, and like, oh yeah, alright, I can just keep doing what I'm doing, it's fine. So, but for this, we're doing, just the first 6, which I believe puts it at, stopping at, the end of, sexual asymmetry and the Satellite Sisters. You know, the idea of moss as snowflakes and individual, like, a particular species and everything working together. It's very cool. And I say, like, in theory, it's that one. Because there's no chapter numbers, which I realize it's a collection of essays. So, just like, I think it was that way for Braiding Sweetgrass too. But there's page numbers, but there's, like, if you look, there's no, like, chapter numbers or anything. And it's counting, like, the intro preface as a chapter. Oh, sorry. So, that's where we're going at the moment. But yeah, there's at least one illustration per essay, and there's a few that there's, like, full diagrams and stuff. So cool, nice. Alright. So we've got that there, this here. Alright. Right. I realize we just started, but apparently my system's decided that it's time to use the facilities again. So I'm gonna turn the music back on, and while I'm waiting for the Google Doc that has the notes and stuff to load, I'm gonna go do that. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. But been a while since you've gone on stream. Yeah. Yeah, it has. Ugh. It's not anything to do with the content of the book, I assure you. The only one that, like, that might be a thing was the prison healer. That was more like annoyance than anything else. So anyway, we shall resume shortly. And alright. That's not what I wanted to do. Alright, there we go. So, and the other thing of tabs just randomly turned up when I came back, so that's fun. Hi, how you doing? I know that we've already covered this, but hope you're all doing well today. Or good-ish, at least. So, there's a lot of stuff going on in here. Ah, man. Yeah. How? Hello. And thank you for the follow. Yes. Much appreciate. Dropped in one of your streams ages ago and you had a good book, and I didn't follow and thought, oh, I'll find this again. I didn't because I'm smart. But yeah. Welcome back. Yeah, no, totally. Like, I get it. So, welcome in. Time zones are also not my favorite, to be honest. Fair. Fair. That is totally understandable. Usually asleep, but working on a report. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, if you want to hang out and stuff for a bit, that's cool. I don't want to keep you from doing something that you need to be doing, but you are welcome to hang out and do things. Yeah, hopefully your report goes well. Can learn, can listen. Alright. Alright. Fabulous. Right now, like we're going through a nonfiction for once. Also, there is a Discord and a YouTube. So even if you miss, I'm way behind on posting them, but even if you miss the book club streams, they're all eventually going to be up on the YouTube too. So that's something to be aware of. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you much. I really need to edit that. Wow. Okay. Because now it's the arts and botany and things as the first one, and the podcast is the second one. But both of them are cool and need to be updated. So there's that. Anyway. Yeah. So we're diving back into nonfiction for the first time, and what's the name of it? It's been a while. Checks out the instant YouTube. Thank you, Ash. Thank you. Appreciate it. What? What was the last nonfiction we did? Ah, there's the pins. Okay. That's not the. Wow. Okay. There we go. Oh man. Right. Ooh, yeah. The ones that you smell different. Yeah, I think so. Maybe. Favorite mosses. Hmm. I remember hearing something about ones that smell different when you touch them, but I I go, wow, that's a word. I don't remember what they're called. Actually, actually, let's use the Google. Whatever they use in Japanese gardens and it is ours. Okay. Hmm. Right. I googled moss that changes smell when you touch it, and it's just like a whole compendium of stink bomb plants. Corsican mint. Relatively low growing moss. I kind of want a path made from it. That would be nice. Oh yeah, lamb's ear is something else. Come on. Okay. Let's see. Corsican mint. Menthol Mentha recreani, or Corsican mint, is an herb and species of mint native to Corsica, Sardinia, mainland in Italy, It's naturalized in Portugal and the British Isles. It's a very low-growing species with bright green leaves and a strong minty aroma. Height, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Lamiaceae mentha. So yeah, not a moss, but moss-like. And then we've got a close-up of the leaves on that one. With very nice little flowers. It does grow in a very nice, like, matte sort of format. Yeah, it's still very cool. Hey, it's fine. Like, yeah, it looks like a very nice one. Botanical garden. Copy. Okay, so there's an article that's gonna be come on, in the science page from the Missouri Botanic Garden about that. Looks nice for wiggling toes, and it does. It does. Like, when I was a kid, very much not. This guy. But now, yeah. Just, there's, around these parts, there's a lot of spooters that like to do the bites. So, yeah. Why not for when you were a kid? Did you not like touching things with your toes? Yeah, no, even wearing shoes, going on grass when I was a kid was very much not a thing. Not entirely sure why, if it was a texture thing or whatnot, but, like, it was very much a thing. Yeah, splitter friends. Anxiety splitter friends. Yeah. I did a rescue, yesterday? Yeah, yeah. I did a splitter rescue yesterday. That was like a Mission Impossible music playing in the background kind of situation. Cause like, dude was a huntsman spider, and they're cool. Like, I really like them. They're fascinating and stuff, and how they hunt and whatever. But like, the harvest harvest bunny, harvest bunny. It might it. Let me see. Harvestman spider and huntsman spider might be the same thing, just regional names. Let me see. No. No. That one. And they're really cool and stuff. But like, if the book here is is the edge of the ceiling, this dude was like right there, like right there. So I'm up there on a step ladder, like with a like a big cup in one hand and like a clipboard in the other hand, trying to like do the thing. And yeah, he's outside now, just living his life, doing his thing. But yeah, bro was just like chilling up in the dining room corner, just Huntsman's floaters are great against ants and bugs and things. They are. People have them as pets for that specific reason. Yeah, no, I can totally see that. I can totally see that. Because partly it's as cool as they are, I know they do the bitey bites, and like they're cool and stuff, but like there's more food for them outside, so yeah. And also we have 3 cats. um, I don't want them to get eaten, and I don't want the 3 of them to get bit with stuff. Natural pest control as long as Buddha friend says long distance friend. Cats are all immune to bitey bite. Oh, I did not know that. So that's not an issue at least. Okay, good to know. Because yeah, I know there's a lot of them that are outside, and one of our cats goes outside sometimes. So no, that's good to know. House cats are like, I can eat this. Well, on top of that, like one of ours that seems to like eating everything, is also allergic to everything. So like, just avoid that one because Jessie is interesting. Yeah, cool. That does take a weight off the mind when it comes to them dealing with them, at least. So that's something. Because I know there's some animals that you can totally coexist just fine and don't have a reaction to stuff. Aha! Yeah. They're pretty robust when it comes to spiders, but if you have a venomous spider, it might still be an issue. Yeah, no worries. No worries. Like, Star's been going in and out of the house in the same environment with Black Widows and Huntsmans for the entirety of the time that we've had her, and she's still fine. So, yeah. I'm definitely still, I can eat this. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. If I fits, I sits, and I eats what I wants. Very much them. Alright. So, put that over there. Yeah, no, it's like that. Ow. Okay. Alright. So, we've got the preface here. So yeah, getting back into the book. Apologies if that was really loud, because I realize now that the mic is like right here, and the reverb from that. So it starts with a preface and acknowledgments. Before getting into the first actual essay, entitled The Standing Stones. And it looks like the illustrations in here are from Howard Crumb, who's a bryologist, or someone who studies mosses, i.e. bryophytes. And Robin's dad, Robert, who I'm not sure from this whether or not he drew some of the drawings or was just instrumental in their creation. But let's see if I can get this to work. Because I'm trying to switch it so that y'all can see what the pictures look like. And so far, I don't know if it's gonna do anything. Alright, here we go. Because I was a genius and didn't set up oh. There we go. Alright. Okay. So, we've got the first illustration, like so, with the bryophytes and the mosses. Bryophytes and mosses. Bryophytes that are mosses. There we go. Don't be a genius, say no to genius. Nice. So, that's that. And I don't have any notes for standing stones. Alright. Looks like bracken. It does. It does. Now that we've, determined that bracken is not in any capacity brambles, like I always figured, and it's more like mossy undergrowth. Yeah, it kind of does. Okay. So, from what I remember of the listening, because this was an entirely listening portion of the exercise, she was wandering through the forest and happened to spot a gap between the rocks, what looked like a cave entrance that she hadn't noticed before, and went through there and found an isolated meadow, enclosed by the standing stones that were there. And oh, yeah, okay. 1 second. Just glanced at the page and those times like, oh yes, that's cool. I need to make a note of that, and then you forget to do it because obviously you'll totally remember later. Yeah, that's what this is. And there's footnotes. Okay. Alright. That's cool. I didn't notice that before. 1 second. Yeah. Was concerned, didn't seem to check if anyone was home first. Yeah, that. Yeah. Yeah. If I remember right, there was some mention where. Oh. I happen to be on that page. Let's see. Was there any mention of, like, there might be a bear? I'm not seeing anything. Just, yeah. The cave draws me inward on my hands and knees into the dark beneath the tons of rock, imagining. Yeah, there it is. Imagining the den of a bear. Like, you might want to check if anyone's home then. If it reminds you of a bear den. Just a thing that might, be useful, maybe. But there you go. She does talk about it being bear country. Yeah. Like, if you're in an area, just as a general PSA even at this point, if you're in an area where there's especially large animals or large animals that are carnivores or just carnivores in general. Things that might try and bite you if you go into their space, you know. Because even herbivores have the teeth and do the bites if you invade their area, and they don't want you there, so, yeah. But like, do a check to see if anyone's home before you go barging in there, you know, as a thing. Just as a general courtesy, if nothing else, you know, whether it's a people or a critter or like any of the above, you know, because there's a lot of animals that if you just do a like, hey, anyone in? Either they'll present themselves to see what is going on, or they'll make themselves scarce so you can just kind of pass through the area without messing with them. Or if they show up, it's like, ah, yes, there is someone home. Have a good day, you know? Instead of just barging in and being like, ah, well, this is awkward. Or just see myself out. Like, you know, as a thing. Yeah. But also, thank you for the marker on that one. I might try and just do a compilation of all the PSAs at this point. Like, be polite to the critter people. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, if nothing else that I've learned from having animals, right? There's some that are completely chill. There's some that are really jittery all the time, regardless of what the species is or what environment they're in. Like, all of our cats have had exactly the same, like, life and stuff. Jessie and Lexi are house cats. Star goes inside, like, she goes outside sometimes. But she's like a year older than the rest of them. Like, max. Because she was pretty small when, she came through. And Jessie gets spooked at everything. And Lex is just like, oh, there's noise. But unless I like make eye contact with Jessie and say like, okay, I'm gonna do something with the trash bag. You see me doing something with the trash bag, so just like chill. I know it gives you anxiety, so like just go in the next room for a second. I'll let you know when I'm done. And most of the time, she sees me pick up a bag, say something, leaves the room, and I open it to work with it later. And I go to tell her that everything's fine and she can go back to having snacks or whatever. And she's sitting like a foot into the next room, just like, okay, I'm in the safe spot. Oh, I can come back? Okay. And then she goes back. But if I don't do that and just like open a bag, she's like out of the room. You know, just work with the critters. You know? They all have their own needs and stuff. Is Jesse the one that needs the gut lube and also eats everything? Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Like, we have to restrict her access to dry food because she gets dehydrated so easily, but, like, she also eats all of the dry food when there's any down, so that's fun. Alright, one sec. Okay, I will move the thing over away from the mute button because, you know, last round there was a 20-minute section where everything was just muted. Yay. Super fun. Yeah. Yeah, no, like, just like with people, you know, you could conceivably just, you know, wander into your friend's house unannounced and whatever, but like, what if they're in the bath or whatever? That's kind of a jerk move, so just like, hey, yo, anyone home? As a thing, right? So, um, it was interesting how she's describing the the feeling of the rocks and the mosses kind of enclosing her in the little meadow space too. Feeling like the outside world has kind of dissipated and things. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a line here on chapter 5, which part of it is being attributed to moss gardening from 1999, so that'd be something else to look into. But yeah, there's actually there's footnotes. So let's see. Is there a footnote glossary thing in here? Because I didn't know. Suggestions for further reading. Other resources. Okay, so there's an index, and there's no, like, compendium of footnotes or whatever, like we've seen in some books. It just says what the, from the looks of it, it's just a footnote when it's a reference to another text. And those are mentioned in the actual, like, at the actual passage, and then all the books together are in the suggestions for further reading at the back. So there's that. Well, that's a good footnote. Yeah, there are. Like, The first one, and so far the only one that I've seen, incidentally, is a reference to this. Terry Pratchett footnotes are best footnotes. Yeah, yeah. Terry Pratchett, did some good footnotes. Yeah. Yeah. Alright. So for this, we've got... There is an ancient conversation going on between mosses and rocks. Poetry, to be sure. About light and shadow and the drift of continents. This is what has been called the, quote, dialectic of moss and stone, an interface of immensity and minuteness, of past and present, soft and hardness, stillness and vibrancy, yin and yang. Which that's the quote attributed to moss gardening. So yeah. Super biased when it comes to Pratchett. No regrets. Yeah. Let me see something real quick. Yeah. Moss exists in liminal space. It does. It does. It's fascinating. Yeah, on the topic of Pratchett, incidentally, unless there's something that I've forgotten, I do believe the only one that I've read at this point, was Good Omens. But there's several that are definitely on the list of things to read on that one. But yeah. Was much a fan of the if you like Good Omens, there's more ones he wrote. Yeah. Like there's definitely like I I greatly appreciated the footnotes in there. Okay. Cool. Very cool. Card series. Alright. We'll make a note of that. Nice. Just to figure out. Oh, fantastic. Alright. Actually, which is difficult if you're from the place she is. Interesting. Okay. Let me. One sec. Nope. Nope. There we go. Come on. Yeah, I've come to accept that if I don't actually write it down, then it will not get remembered. So have Word document open. Awesome. Lee Freeman, The Hat Sky. Oh. There we go. Alright. Yay for book regs. Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome sauce. Okay. And starts writing, end of stream. Got the solicitor practice because it just keeps going. This one's good, this one's good. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah. Alright. Alright. Okay. Interestingly, the way that at least Audible is working with this text, they have it set up so chapter 4 is learning to see. So like the first 2 chapters are the preface and the acknowledgments, which would explain why they were as short as they were. Anyway. Yeah. There's point. That's 4, 5. So 6 is probably back to the pond at that point. Yeah. We'll see. Anyway. Alright. So. In the next section, right? Learning to see, it's like essentially training your brain how to recognize certain things in an environment that you might not be not so much familiar with, but like if you're used to seeing stuff on like at eye level or at like herb level or whatnot, more like ground level. Now imagining Rin is the ending credit weatherwax. Well, I don't know the character. Any character given that name sounds like a fabulous being unto themselves, so. Now I just want to read whatever it is that they're from. So, yeah, they're. Yeah. Because, like, epic names and things and stuff, you know? So essentially, the language that you use to interact with others makes a difference with how relationships form. That goes across the board, whether it's oh, it is the same. Okay. Is that just the header? Yeah, alright. Okay, so it's the same Bryophyte image for all of the chapter headings. Okay, that's cool. And then there's other illustrations in some of the chapters. Nice. Great weather wax. Okay. Have a good sleep, Ash. I will see you later. Have a fab sleep time. She's fab and you would love her. Start with Weird Sisters. Alright. Good to know. Ah! Come on. Come on. Let me type, dang it. There you go. Hugs for Ash. Have a good sleep. We'll see you later, friend. Nope. There we go. Yeah. Alright. Can you not move tabs? Like they're just sitting there on the corner of the computer and just like slowly migrating away. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so in here, one of the main points of note is that most mosses don't have a common name because they weren't deemed important enough or interesting enough to be interacted with on a regular enough basis to have a common name. So they're just there. They might be known in certain like regional areas because there are mosses that have been used for like a food or any number of things. There's a few that have been used to treat abrasions, I believe. But also most mosses, as it were, aren't actually true mosses or bryophytes, even though there's like 22,000 species of moss hanging out on the planet that, you know, we're aware of at this point. There's probably more than that at this, honestly, just because, just like deep sea and rainforest species aren't categorized as much as some of the more quote unquote accessible ones might be. Which, on that note, apparently they've just discovered at least one, probably at this point more reef systems that don't seem to be negatively impacted by climate change. So that's a positive. At least the ones that I saw mentioned, it was a rose formation in the coral, so yeah. Anyway. Yeah. What does bryophyte mean? Fangirls of Bry, whoever he is. See, there was an Irish, um, not pop, like folk pop, I guess, artist that I followed on YouTube for a while. Hasn't uh hasn't posted anything for a while, but went by Bry. Had some fans. So there's that. But yeah, what is the etymological breakdown of bryophyte actually? Because just like for most, it seems, mosses are not my forte. Okay, I found a thing. It's not the thing I was looking for, but it's interesting. Phylogenomic evidence for the monophily of bryophytes and the reductive evolution of stomata. Missed a big bright white thankful back in the day. I don't know why I'm covering the headphone part. That's not where the sound goes. I will admit to not knowing who that is. Brian Adams, I'm familiar with because I was part of the Brian Adams fans in high school, mostly because he did most of the songs for Spirit. So there's that. Fan with a caveat of like the Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron album. Country musician. Oh, okay. Cool. Okay, fine. I'll just do this and open it in Chrome. Alright. Let's just see. I'm gonna just look up bryophytes and see because there's usually there we go. Brian Adams is good listening. Yeah, I haven't listened to the English just away. I haven't. There we go. Re-engage. I haven't listened to any of his stuff for a while. Since about high school, actually. Just, yeah, there was apparently just a whole compendium of, like, musical genres and everything that I was listening to and then just stopped. Yes. Think I might know why. Right. Okay. Interesting. Let's see. Oh, wait. There we go. Okay. Like, you have to look for it sometimes. But, like, the bryophytes were considered a Paraphletic Group. What's that? In taxonomy, a group is paraphyletic if it consists of the group's last common ancestor and all its descendants, but excluding a few, typically one or two monophyletic subgroups. The group is said to be paraphyletic with respect to the excluded subgroups. In contrast, a monophyletic group, a clade, includes a common ancestor and all of its descendants. Okay. The terms are commonly used in phylogenetics and the tree model of historical linguistics. The paraphyletic groups are identified by a combination of synomorphies or derived traits. There we go. Come on. And simplest synomorphies that are near form. Oh, yeah. Ancestral characteristics shared by all members of the clade. If many subgroups are missing from the named group, it is said to be polyparaphyletic. Oh, okay. Cool. Almost all the phylogenetic evidence supports the monophyly of this group, as originally classified by Wilhelm Schipper in 1879. The term bryophyte comes from ancient Greek bron for tree moss or liverwort, and futon or plant. Okay. Alright. Yeah, I know I'm not saying this right. Let's see if there's an audio component. Okay. There's not. From okay. Oh, there's as much as I love linguistics, the only the only time that like I legitimately have trouble like reading something is when it's trying to be phonetics. Not just like phonetically written out, but like phonetics with the pronunciation. Which I realize that for some folks that it's fine and hopeful and everything. But and that's one of them. Come on. Copy. There you go. Okay. So that one's going in the science channel too. Anyway. So yeah. It's Greek to me. Ancient Greek, actually, on that one. Yeah. So. I think Bryan Adams did the original Forever Young, and that's a classic. Oh, nice. Cool. Very cool. Okay. So yeah, the main takeaway from learning to see is like observe your environment and how you talk about other beings in the environment, whether they be people or animals or plants or rocks or whatever, influences how you interact with them. And whether or not you recognize the personhood of place and the human and non-human beings residing therein. That, and it doesn't, they might not roll off the tongue as easily as a lot of common names, but there is a certain beauty to the scientific names of particular species, which is cool. That, and if they're so different and yet pretty similar, especially from a distance, having that specific name structure when referring to individual species makes it a lot easier to document which one you're talking about, because otherwise you get a situation where, like, yes, we had Nightshade. Like, okay, so that's great and all, but like, do we need to call an ambulance for you, or are you fine? Like, I don't. Or, we had white carrots. I mean, being that you're not dead, I'm guessing it's not hemlock that you ate, but like, questions, you know? And Usually that's not the one that gets confused, but if you just see the frond bits, they look like carrot greens because they're in the same family. They're just, you know, the bitey ones of the bunch. And there are white or usually it's yellow carrots. It depends on how pale they are. But there are yellow carrots that can get pretty pale depending on soil composition that are pretty sweet. And, you know, I don't know off the top of my head how hemlock and associated things are generally supposed to taste exactly. Being that the majority of the time when folks end up eating them, it doesn't end well for them. I'll say that. But something tells me it's not that. It's like a little more bitter or whatnot. I think carrots and California poppy frondy bits are more similar. Yeah, that I can see too. So yeah. Like, it's one of those, just like said multiple times before, if you don't know what it is, don't eat it. You know? If you can't ID it within, like, any possible margin of error, don't eat it. And if that's the only thing that you have to eat, and you think that you might be okay with it, like, just like a little nibble off whatever it is that you're trying to eat, just like a little bit, to see if there's any kind of immediate reaction, so that you can then spit it out if need be. Because the number of times that I've heard a story about, like, well, I mean, no, like, we've ID'd this, it's fine. And then, like, totally just take some greens or whatever and make a sandwich out of it. And then something happens because that's not what it was supposed to. No, you don't want to do that. No. Yeah, don't be that guy. No. Because at that point, once you start actually, you know, feeling the effects of something, it's usually a bit too late there. It depends on how fast your system has started absorbing everything and what it is that you're working with, but most of the time, especially if you're in a situation where you're actually foraging for supplies, most of the time you're not like 2 minutes away from emergency services. Thank you, how'd it go? Okay. Yeah. So, where's that? And then we've got advantages. There we go. Advantages. So I kept wanting to say the advantages, and it's not the word. Are there any poisonous mosses? I don't think so. Because that seems like it would have a negative impact on, like, the reproductive strategies, maybe. But okay. Really? I'm trying to read this thing that you showed me, and now you're just having a fit. What is happening? Ah, right. It made me close out an ad, and then it's decided it wants to work. Okay, here we go. Is most moss... Nah. Is moss... There we go. Is moss edible or is it poisonous? Moss can help you find true north, insulate a shelter, find and purify water, and treat wounds. Some types of moss and lichens are edible, while others are either mildly toxic or downright poisonous for humans. In addition, is it a decomposer? It's both a decomposer and a producer. Also, is moss safe to have inside? The environmental benefits of moss walls are impressive. They can improve air quality and help stabilize humidity in your interior. Imported, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The animal species that appears to eat moss the most is a small mammal called I can never remember if it's a pika or a pika, a relative of the rabbit. Moss might make up as much as 60% of their diet. It's also occasionally eaten by other animals living in cold climates like Dall sheep and Arctic hares, caribou, lemmings, voles, and muskox. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah. That's the wrong thing. Come on. Oh, nice. 6 types of edible mosses. Very cool. Moss helping you find cardinal directions of methods in it. Find the article highly sus. Yeah, that one... That particular, like, I just posted it in the Discord, but the only part of that I'm willing to, like, have full, like, faith in is that there's some mosses that could have a negative impact on you, and others, you can eat, and some are, like, able to be used for medicinal purposes and stuff. Because that seems reasonable. Everything that I've heard about the True North thing is false. It depends entirely on where you are and the average community of the environment. In most locales, moss grows wherever the frick it feels like. It's just there, vibing. There might be some trees that it's more on one side than another because of shade, but overall, that depends more on what kind of branch coverage there is in the forested area than anything else. That, and it sounds like, I didn't scroll through the whole thing, but it sounds like it's a sales page more than anything else, because it sounds like they're wanting to install a moss wall in your place, so it's telling you about moss and that it's controllable if you have moss in your space, essentially. So, there's that. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yes. As in, has actually eat moss. Okay. Awesome. You can eat moss, and there are several edible mosses like reindeer moss, isle moss, sphagnum moss, oak moss, Spanish moss, willow, rock tripe, and kalpasi. Even if some mosses are considered edible, you should still stick. You can still get sick due to cross-contamination and due to toxic nature of some mosses and lichens. Yeah, fair. Alright. Irish moss is USDA certified. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah. Of the... There's a particular smell, right? I can never remember what the candle company was at this point, because it was like back in high school. but there was a candle company that used to be around that had a candle that it smelled like you were walking through a forest. And if I remember right, that the scent was labeled as oak moss. And it's like a combination of a lot of the ones that are like the the tree forest walk or whatever, and I think there was one that was like it was supposed to smell like bourbon. It didn't, but the bourbon one, like, kind of together. That's about the closest that I've gotten to those, or like the cedar, yeah, like bourbon and cedar or something. But yeah, sphagnum moss is pretty cool too, honestly. All pretty fab. Yeah, very cool. Alright. So, we've got that. So in chapter 5, we've got is that 5? Yeah, it's gotta be 5. So 6 then would be okay. When you guys were listening to the text, did you get to a chapter that, or a section rather, that was talking about the satellite systems? Okay. So, for chapter 5, as it were, we've got the the advantages of being small, life in the boundary layer. So, for that, it's kind of a discussion of mosses being resilient and remarkably adapted to life as small plants. And how right in the liminal space between earth and air is, like, it's a relatively calm spot. So, like, if there's heavy winds or whatnot happening, if you get down on that layer. Okay, one sec. Don't know if the audio was real janky for a bit there, but apparently the mic got pulled out for a second. So If I need to repeat anything, let me know. It should be fine now. Yeah. But yeah. So in this section, we've got a kind of rundown and discussion of moss anatomy, if you will, and the idea that mosses don't have like a rigid vascular system, so they can only really grow to a certain height. Yeah. Here we go. I think you're okay on the audio. Okay. Good to know. Because part of this is as I'm going back over stuff, I'm remembering where there was a thing that, like, oh yes, I totally want to make a note of that, and then promptly forgot it existed. So there we go. Yeah. So mosses are small because they lack any support system to hold them up, right? Large mosses occur mostly in lakes and streams where the water can support their weight. Trees stand tall and rigid because of their vascular tissue. The network of xylem, thick-walled tubular cells that conduct water within the plant like wooden plumbing. Mosses are the most primitive of plants and lack any such vascular tissue. So essentially, they can only grow to be a few centimeters tall, or they wouldn't be able to keep themselves hydrated and then die. Unless they're more or less like in water at any given point, because then they're just there and can remain hydrated. And oh, there we go. That was another one. And because of that, and because they, for the most part at least, kind of live on the forest floor, they have to have certain adaptations in order to do that, because they are photosynthetic life forms. And if they're existing on the forest floor under a canopy where not all that much light is getting through, that's kind of an issue. So, yeah, here we go. The type of chlorophyll in their leaves differs from their sun-loving counterparts. It is fine-tuned to absorb the wavelengths of light that filter through the forest canopy. So, well, which incidentally, between that and heat and exposure and everything, would make a difference as to how mosses would interact when exposed to direct sunlight, too, depending on things. And then to illustrate the idea of the boundary layer and the luminality and everything, when you lie on the ground on a sunny afternoon to look up and watch the clouds as they go by, you place yourself in the boundary layer of the Earth's surface. I guess you're at that join point between Earth and sky. You're in that like small range of boundary protected space and whatnot. And the climate right next to the ground is different from the climate 6 feet above the ground. So, like, it's a joke that's kind of an insult that's, whatever. But the idea of, like, yes, how's the weather up there? Like, legitimately, as you increase distance from ground level, the weather patterns and the climate changes. It's a thing. Alright. Also, okay. Yeah. Such y'all find that fabulous. Hey, Eel. Gonna be doing I can lay down after a long day. Alright. Understandable. Thank you for popping in and saying hi. Welcome to the shenanigans. Hope you're having a good day. And a good rest bit after a heckin' long day. 'Cause, yeah. Looks nice with the earphones. They match your shirt. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, oddly, in this lighting, they really do. Like, in person, they're like... Actually, let me see. Huh. Because, yeah, here, the heart looks red-ish, and everything else is orange. But in person, the heart and the headphones are the same color. Yeah. Alright. There you go. Hugs for Eel. Kiss the fab. Optimal optical illusion. Very nice. Very nice. Yay. Yay for hugs. Yeah. Let's see if I can get this to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, here we go. So, that's not what that's supposed to do. 1 second. I'm trying to show a chart. Right. So, over here we've got airflow on the surface. And then over here we've got airflow over moss. So it's like, yeah, y'all have some good sleepies when y'all get there. Stay warm as long as it's not a problem, and vice versa. Yeah, yeah. Have good sleeps and stay comfy and stuff. And we'll see you later. We'll see you later, friend. Have a fabulous sleepio. Yeah. I always forget what the lurk command is, because most people don't use it. They just disappear. But yeah, no, the super stealth spy mode is awesome. Alright, so, as an illustrative thing, we've got, come on, work with me here, bug. Come on. We've got over here that, actually, let me just, is that stable? Maybe, maybe not, we'll see. Okay, here we go. Sort of, kinda, well. There we go. It's about the angle, apparently. Alright, so that is just air going over a surface, generally over ground. So for the laminar flow, we've got relatively no resistance or anything, just fast moving up top, and then it's slower and turbulent under that. And still slow at the boundary layer. And then over a moss carpet, you have the same sort of setup, but as you're getting closer to the boundary layer, there's more that breaks it up because there's resistance and stuff there. So it slows down the air and things of that nature. But yeah. And for the laminar flow, what was it? The air stream becomes separated into different layers, into layers of different speed. There's swiftly moving air aloft, flowing in a smooth sheet. Beneath it lies a zone of turbulence where the air swirls and eddies as it encounters obstacles. And it becomes slower and slower until at the surface itself it's still. Oh, no, come on. Okay. Thought I was fine, but I need to pop out for a bio break, so we'll be right back. And that's not what. There we go. There we go. Oregon Museum of Science and Industry has a tall pole with weather vanes all along its height. Demonstrates different wind directions and speeds at different levels. So I think windsocks, not weather vanes. Yeah. Yeah, windsocks would make more sense. That's cool though. That is very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Alright. We're back doing things and stuff. Alright. So. Interview. Okay. Habit. Yeah. Also, interesting thing here. Not only is there heat trapped in that boundary space, but there's water too. Whether it's from a temperature differential or wind speeds or whatnot. So there's a humid. Yeah, I'm moving the headphones around all over the place. So there's a humid sort of area, and mosses need that because if they get outside of that range, then they dry out and stop being able to photosynthesize, which you kind of need as a moss, you know. Yeah. So, I know there's a lot of mosses that they can be like fully dried out, or at least mostly dried out, and then water's reintroduced to the environment, and then they just back to life. But yeah, so important things to be aware. Also, it depends on what species you're working with as to what environment you're going to find them on. Because there's some that need very particular conditions, and there's some that can grow pretty much anywhere. And there's some that need particular conditions, but it's like, the antithesis to what another species needs, because they happen to coexist in the same environment, and one is more showy, so it has like a different set of characteristics and needs that need to get met versus the other one. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So like there's a few mosses that are only a millimeter high, versus like several centimeters, up to 10. Okay, so pretty decent height there. The differences in stature can usually be traced to differences in the depth of the boundary layer in that particular habitat. The boundary layer on a rock face exposed to wind and full sun is quite thin, hence the mosses of such arid places must be very small in order to stay within the protective boundary layer. In contrast, mosses on a rock in a moist forest can grow much taller and still remain within a favorable microclimate, because the boundary layer of the rock is under the umbrella of the boundary layer of the forest itself. So it depends on where that break is, where the fast-moving air currents, if you will, are, anyway, and what's surrounding it. Any feature of a surface that increases friction with moving air can slow the air and create a thicker boundary layer. A roughened surface slows the passage of air more effectively than a smooth one, which also water time. Which is also important to keep in mind. It's the same principle as if you want, I don't know, say you've got toasters or a laptop or something, and you put them on a table and you want them to not move. They're a lot less likely to move if they've got some kind of non-skid, like feet on them or something, than if they don't. Because there's resistance there. There's some kind of, not surface tension, but there's some kind of texture to the surface, you know? Yeah. Forgot to say, cute ghosty makes nice hat friend for Squeed. Lest we forget, suggest through chapter 12 for next week. Yeah, that works. Good plan. Oh, yeah. When y'all were, thou speakest of fiction. Indeed. When you were listening to it, did you get to a section talking about the satellite sisters? Or no? Yeah, wandering or things and whatnot. Yes, yes, the friction of things. Yes. All right. Many moss species have long, narrow leaves held upright to slow the airflow around them. Moreover, the leaves of mosses in dry sites often possess dense hairs, long reflective leaf tips, or minuscule spines. These extensions from the leaf surface also slow the moving air and reduce evaporation of essential moisture by creating a thicker boundary layer. So, like, essentially, you've got, the main populace down here, and then, like, some of them have giant, like, palm fronds or something. It's like, yes. Because that creates more resistance, and it slows the area down. The area, the wind down while going over the area. So there's, like, more resistance, so therefore it's more protected. Words. Don't remember the Satellite Sisters, remember Moss, Sex Packets, and Frogs. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay. Yeah, no, because asking that, I couldn't quite remember what, like, because there's no, like, chapter numbers in here, I couldn't quite remember which, ow. I managed to stab my foot with the other foot, because that's how heels work, apparently. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. So, we'll just move that there. That works. Okay. Fabulous. Okay. So, we've got the spores and everything are where the plants are, right? In the nice little protected boundary layer, and they're fine and stuff. However, apparently, most of them can't actually germinate in, like, the leafy carpet where their parents were. So they have to get away somehow. So there's a number of species that have the spores on, like, long long setae. There we go. Stalks that kind of poke up above the boundary layer, so that when the wind comes through, it can, like, move the spores along, so that they can find another spot to propagate on, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Alright, so the final essay discussion thing for today We've got I think it's just that the pages are really thin. Because, like, this is 8 pages right here. Which is kind of messing with my brain. Anyway. Yeah. Also, right, well, it's very much like a glossy cover. It's not that matte, nicely textured one that Braiding Sweetgrass has. I do appreciate the consistency with the color palette and like just the handmade paper sort of look with the plant across it and things. So there's that. Also, it's a winner of the John Burroughs Medal Award for Natural History Writing, which I didn't even know was a thing until going through this. So very cool. Alright, so now we get back to the moss, sex packets, and frogs. There we go. Alright. Okay. Like, I understand collecting frog spawn and being able to see it turn into tadpoles and then older tadpoles and then juvenile frogs and then become frogs and then you release the frogs back into the pond that they originated from and all that. But like it's one of those that I can totally see the why and kind of the how, but also but then also I've never raised okay, that was weird. The word was amphibians, and I knew the word was amphibians, but I couldn't get myself to say amphibians. Weird. Anyway, or like butterflies or something. It's the same sort of principle. Where I know there's sometimes that people will find a cocoon or pupa, depends on the species and stuff, and in order to protect it, put it in like a contained, usually like for butterflies and moths and stuff, it's usually like a net environment with like a few sticks and things in there. Once they start developing more, I guess, and a lot of it I know is connected to heat and moisture and whatnot in the air. So there's that. But yeah. They're very cool critters. They are. And there's certain plants that, like most plants at this point, have, well, not most maybe, but a lot of plants at this point. Chrysalis and few, but yeah, exactly. But a lot of plants at this point have some variation of pollen or whatnot. For mosses and ferns, it tends to be spores. For mosses, it's spores. Or they just clone themselves. But yeah, okay, there we go. Alright, 1 second. I listened to the audio and then forget to go back in the text to mark things because I was doing something else instead. Anyway, so there's a lot of stories throughout world cultures that have like an origin of whatever it is, whether it's the origin of the world or origin of a particular species or whatnot. And she relays that the traditional knowledge of the Zuni people tells that the world began as clouds and water until the marriage of earth and sun brought forth green algae. And from the algae, there arose all the forms of life. And scientific knowledge tells us that before the world was green, the only life was in the water. Which, yeah. Whether it's just because, well, at that point it's mostly because there wasn't enough dissolved like oxygen, and it's generally oxygen and nitrogen to make the surface above water largely habitable, and most of that and the protective like ozone layer came from photosynthetic algae, however it's pronounced. And it wasn't until, I mean, there's some outliers that can survive some manner of UV radiation and stuff, especially at that point. But it wasn't until there was enough of an ozone buildup that there was really able to be any life forms hanging out above water, at which point they tried to be above water. But, if you know you're going to die if you try and do the thing, you're a lot less likely to try and do the thing. So, there's that. Yeah. And, yeah. Alright, so in that environment, when everything was, when all the plant material was essentially like in the water, having a reproductive strategy that was kind of dependent on a wet environment where there was a male and a female plant, and one had sperm and one had eggs, they could just kind of swim around and do their thing. Without the need for a protective enclosure for anything. But in the process of becoming land plants, however that happened, whether it was an environmental thing or whether they just kind of inched their way up the land, who knows really. But there's a number of plants that still have that rely on water as a fertilization mechanism. Certain cycads are like that. Some cycads rely on beetles. I think ants for a few other ones. But some, like the mosses, are like that. And from that, you see some species that have almost entirely started doing asexual reproduction. And there's some... sorry about the cough. I'm not sick right now, it's just been pretty windy and dry. There we go. That's a little better. So, yeah. And in the case of the mosses, right, we've got instances where, let me see if I can get this and back up. 1 sec. Oh, hey, no. I realize that y'all are currently looking at the fabulousness that is is the lamp here. So 1 second. Come on. There you go. That's not what's supposed to be there. 1 second. As I move this out of the way. We're experiencing some technical difficulties because the camera decided to turn itself off. Come on. Come on, buddy. There we go. Alright, there we go. So, we've got the life cycle. Can you not? Alright. Whoa, hey now. There we go. Okay. Please tell me it did not just die again. Alright. There we go. Okay. Okay. So, this is the life cycle of a typical moss that is on page 23. So we've got inside work. Okay. Alright. There we go. I tried to make it, bigger, and it didn't. Okay, so let's start down here. I know y'all can't see it, but where is it? We're starting down here. So it says the spore germinates into filamentous protonema. Protonema. Now if we move up here, you can. There we go. So spore germinates into filamentous protonema, and then it just kind of continues. Then over here, there we go. Protonema grows to become leafy shoot, and then you have either the male shoot off on the left here, or the female shoot on the right. So if it becomes a male shoot, then you have magnified antheridium. If it's a female shoot, you have magnified archegonium. So that's the reproductive structures. If it's male, then it further has the development here. If it's female, that's what we're looking at. So then we see the sperm released in a water droplet. So like if it rains, or if it hasn't rained for a while, but there's dew, there's that. Then the sperm swim to the egg in the archegonium. So the sperm has to go from the male plants to the female plants, and then into the archegonium in order to have fertilization take place. Which again is fine if they're, in a watery environment. Not so much on land though. It's got some issues on land, especially because especially because there's only like, I don't know, an hour that the sperm can manage outside of the structure that they're in. Tapping out. Okay. Have a good sleep, friend. Have a good sleep. We'll see you later. Many thanks for hanging out and being awesome. There you go. Hugs for you. And then we've got, if all of that takes place, then we've got fertilization happening. And a young sporophyte emerging from the archegonium. And this right here, we've got the spores on the long stalk that is reaching up above the boundary layer. And then mature sporophytes on leafy gametophytes, which is this. And then spores land on substrate, and the whole process begins again. So, yeah, which is cool. Yep, and then back to book club mode. Okay. Alright, that's the last. Oh, there we go. Last visual aid situation for today. Or almost. I'll just do this. So, that's one of the illustrations in there. Yeah. So yeah, unless there's very particular conditions being met, there's only like an hour that the sperm can last before they just die off. So if the eggs aren't fertilized in that span of time, then they just remain unfertilized if that particular species hasn't adopted like asexual reproduction or a number of other options. Yeah. So yeah, with the cloning, it eliminates the need for an egg and sperm to get together in the same spot, and take the time and energy and everything to produce this sporophyte, because it takes a lot of energy to produce the reproductive structures like that, especially if it's not going to get actually used for anything. And yeah, there's some species that in the world of biology it becomes like it's called bisexual, which in the world of biology would mean that there's both male and female on the same plant. So essentially it can self-fertilize, but then you get a very tiny gene pool. Very tiny. Just like there's some, I believe it's just ferns, but I could be wrong, where there's one cycle that is asexual reproduction, and then the next cycle is sexual reproduction, so that it maintains a relatively diverse genetic profile, but it's relatively easy to reproduce too. So that's the thing. And so, yeah. And that brings us to the end of today's reading. So, okay, let's see. So we're doing 7 to 12 for next time. So, okay. So, if you're looking at the hard copy, it's 29 to 81, it looks like. So we've got sexual asymmetry and the satellite sisters to choices. So, yeah. There we go. It's a lot shorter than braiding sweetgrass is. It's a slightly different I wouldn't say emphasis, but it's a completely different plant that's being talked about, so it's obvious that it would be a different emphasis. Especially because sweetgrass is so integral to so many indigenous cultures. Yeah. a very fascinating read and things. So, looking forward to going through the next couple weeks with this. Anyway, that is it for today. I will see y'all later. And anyone have any questions or whatnot? Or no? Anybody? No? Alright. Okay. Alright. So, hope you have a fabulous day. Fabulous rest of your day. And I will see all of you later. Alright. In that case, have a good one. And yeah. There we go. Now, is there anyone that we want to raid? I don't know. I don't really see them. Okay. So, yeah. Have a fabulous rest of your day, evening, nighttime, whatever time it is for you. I will see y'all later. If not here on the Twitch, then hopefully on YouTube or Instagram or the Discord, wherever. Have a fabulous day. I will see you later. Bye, everybody. Come on.